Wanna know where is my tool bucket? Who took it from me? Broke into my house that night and stole from me. Using a blowtorch is quite insanity. Then got a rock and threw it through the window, the back door window. Snuck into the house, that foolish bucket foe. Took it to the pawn shop to get money. Need your hands here now. Hey dude man, coolest thing around. My show now, you're my hands right now. This is Adam Sheffield. Welcome to American Heritage Center Radio, home of the Property Therapy and Talent Development Program. We are here today with comic Steve Williams, aka Thrilliams. Steve Thrilliams. And part of the property therapy issues out there is the morale of the property therapists. And one of the some of the things that affect the morale of the property therapists are like music, faith orientation, or comedy.
Right.
And so Steve here is, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
He's a comedian known for his work in the movie Paragon 1 and 2. And he was nominated former Best of KC Comic. And has performed throughout the United States in L.A., New York, Chicago, all the major capitals.
The places you want to go if you want people to think you're funny.
And plenty of cities around the country. He's originally from here in Independence.
That is correct. And I was born at Independence Regional Hospital.
So
I'm also, my sister and I hold the record for the biggest twins to ever be born at that hospital.
Wow. Yeah. Nice. What was the size?
I was 8'7", and I think she was 8'3". So we were normal-sized babies.
So we have normal-sized babies, and but with
twins, yeah,
with twins,
big twins,
yeah, with precocious intellects.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we're going to talk property therapy stories, and then we're going to talk Contractor Olympics and talk about supporting your sound, which comics have to use in the mechanics of their bodies when you're breathing, right? And singers. So we're going to talk about the hands-on portion and then sing a Billy Joel song. Piano Man, how's that sound? So we're going to property stories. So this is a property therapy is a subject that's forever.
It's forever.
It's forever. It's so rich in materials.
Oh, so ominous.
So we're going to talk property therapy stories, like haunting of houses or property or evaluation, how you value properties, or drug trades, comedy.
You might up the value of your property with drug trade for a short period of time.
Long term, yeah, it might be a short term.
Not a long term goal.
Yeah, not a long term down. Yeah, no. And then we're going to talk about his recent wedding in his house that he's grandma's house that he lives in. And then break-ins on properties, and we're going to talk about techniques for humor and how comedians construct material. So on haunting of the houses, have you ever experienced a haunting of your?
I live in a very old neighborhood, so yes. Both the house that I grew up in and the house that I'm currently in, plenty of stuff has happened around. Or I think I have a ghost cat that knocks things down. It's weird. Things will just like fly off like it's just been batted, and nobody's near it. But it's not like I'm scared of it. It's just I've got another cat that doesn't live.
So we were on your porch.
Easy to clean up after.
Yeah, much better.
Part, yeah.
So we were on your porch and talking to your friend, and he said, I saw the face of his grandma on the porch.
Yeah, I think it was my great-grandma, and I guess it was just kind of
her house,
her
original house that you inherited.
My great-grandma lived there with my grandma and Pap when I was a baby because they were taking care of her near the end. It wasn't her house. They took her in because they were best equipped to take care of her. But he said he saw her just leaning, just like staring at his face when he was sitting on the porch. I was like, well, I don't feel anything bad, so you're probably fine.
So this feeds into the subjective and objective realities or evaluations of properties, right? Because they have under the law, they have
a term called psychologically affected or psychologically damaged properties, like in real estate. In some jurisdictions, like if there was a murder or some horrid crime or occurrence
They
of
have
that
to
property,
state that
they
before.
have to state that if it's within a specific time frame, they have to disclose
like
that.
if somebody got murdered last week, you got to tell somebody about that.
Yeah. It depends on the jurisdictions. Not all the jurisdictions. Some they fought it in the court and they say that doesn't affect if the roof leaks or not.
Right.
And
It does if the roof leaks blood.
yeah, that would be an objective valuation there. Because you got to get.
I mean, this is a pretty nice house, but does it always leak blood like that? Oh no, it's only a few weeks a year. You should be just fine.
That's what the kills are for, right?
Right.
We want the lives, not the kills. So the subjective valuation, it is a real thing for the person. It can be a real thing.
I guess somebody, it's like when somebody's selling any kind of property they have, if they have more of a personal stake in it, then they're going to think it's worth so much more than the average Joe coming off the street that goes, "This house is worth $10,000." It's worth $1 million.
That's where
Do you know what happened here?
I was bathed in the kitchen.
I was bathed in the kitchen sink of that house.
kitchen sink.
I was. Because at one point I could fit in it.
So your great grandma inherited. You inherited it from your great grandma.
No, I inherited it from my grandparents. My mom's mom and her dad. Pat bought the house in the 50s after they were. So my grandparents got married down the street in front of the house 2 doors down, and then he before that had bought this property so they would have a home to go to. So they got married there, just walked 2 doors down and lived there for 50-something years. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of memory there. I mean, both with not only like my childhood, but my mother's childhood. You know, there's still, like, I've found stuff at the house that were her toys from the house that are still in there, you know, from the 60s and 70s,
special,
you know.
Very special. And this is something that we were talking about, comics or athletes or musician performers. They catch lightning in a bottle.
Right.
The property helps stabilize you.
Exactly.
Even for as a comic.
When you have something to fall back on, you are much more comfortable and just spending the time and writing and coming up with things because you don't have to worry about that roof over your head anymore, where you're going to go home to. You're not going to sleep on a bus bench. You know, you can go home and sit down in front of the laptop or a notebook and just, you know, write stuff out and keep going. Whereas you wouldn't without the property.
And it's what we call at the Heritage Center a talent harbor to develop your talents and realize your dreams. Isn't that right, Bowie? So Bowerbirds here. We have Bowie in the studio here. They build. Yeah. So we watched a Bowerbird video, didn't we, John?
Yeah. Showed some juvenile male bowerbirds pretending to be the female being courted so they could get close enough to the bower to steal the little trinkets and things that the male bower had placed.
How cunning.
So we were talking about property therapy skills.
They do that on Prospect now.
They
they
charge money for that too. I guess. I mean, I've heard.
Yeah, so they were snatching the trinkets.
They were trinket poachers.
They were, yeah. So John and I were talking about like property therapy skills. We want like the artists and people to be able to get those property therapy skills in tandem with their talents.
Right.
Like we were talking about how the HVAC system works in your house to get an understanding of that.
Yeah, the more you know.
The more you know, right? And it's really intriguing. And this will help the artists and the talented people to get traction and stability in their lives because we want to see them channel and get their resources while it lasts like they catch lightning in the bottle. If you don't sink it into something before the devil gets it away from you.
If you don't have a place to plant your feet, how are you going to jump?
Yeah. So, but in this video, he was describing that the juvenile bowerbirds were posing as females, and they were showing up at the bower and pretending to be females, and then snag the trinkets away. And the bower, the mature.
Do they also
bowerbird,
play music for this, like hot stuff, maybe?
They were dancing. I just don't think there was any music. There was definitely a dance going on.
So this is why this, and John and I were talking about this, is the importance of the faith orientation in your life, because it helps you channel your property therapy skills.
Right.
Because we want to have people get property therapy skills, but also have an accompanying faith orientation to be able to have wisdom to use their talents aright, and not.
And a man should never have to try to be a female to get what he wants.
No.
To imitate.
I just plain can't because I'm 6'5" and 260.
Yeah, I don't think they make the high heels. You have to make your own.
Right.
There'd be some property therapy for your high heels.
It'd just look like cobbled
something like
together wood if I did that.
So in the
I think
talent,
they call those stilts for you.
Yeah.
so the talents on the to channel them aright and not use it to steal, to pilfer others'
Right.
trinkets, because the property therapy skills is like
We'll teach you how to have your own.
Yeah, no, it'll teach people. We don't want to teach people to become better criminals, right?
Right.
That's why in tandem with the property
That's what
therapy
prison's
skills.
for.
Yeah, and so what it is it's channeling, not only getting the property therapy skills, but also having the faith orientation to get wisdom
the right
along with
thing
your
when you're
choice.
doing
Yeah,
it.
the wisdom, and because skills, there's information and intelligence is one thing, but wisdom is
Right.
knowing how to use that intelligence in the right ways
To
'Cause
apply what you know.
yeah, because short term, this could be a plan short term, like pilferings and stuff, but long term, it's not a plan.
You can't make a house out of trinkets.
yeah, no, just despite
I mean, a
what,
lot of people try.
despite what Jim the Crow might think here, it doesn't make a long term plan.
Jim, what's your plan?
The government has not given it to me to plan yet. I'm still waiting for them to tell me what it is.
Check those back pages.
So the government, the government.
Ever since Craigslist shut down, I had to do that.
So we have, in addition to haunting and the objective subjective valuation of property, another property therapy issue is squatters.
Right. Because even if you don't have squatters in your own house, if you live in a neighborhood that has abandoned properties, you run the risk of having that problem around, and that lowers the property values, making no matter what you've put into your own property be devalued. Not be worth nearly as much time as the time and money you've spent into it, because of the actions of a few that refuse to do it on their own.
Yes, and so property valuation is viewed. It's affected by what's happening around it, because that's the one thing that can't be changed in property is location,
Right.
location. And if around the location you have people that aren't stewards or don't care, or they're not, they're there without permission, right? Because
Right.
that's what makes a squatter. They're there
Exactly.
without permission.
But what if the squatter was like Dennis Rodman?
I don't think he can squat under a lot.
Well, he could play basketball with the kids. I'm going to argue it might bring up the property value for a little while.
Fair enough. Maybe in North Korea. That's usually where he plays these days. It's way easier to win one-on-one when your opponent's only 5'2".
Yeah, no, but that's the thing, is that there's a question whether he would be without the owner's permission, because they would be kind of like excited.
You would think
You
he'd
know
be
what
an
I mean?
asset to the area.
Yeah. No, but short term, it could be exciting. Long term, it could be an imposition.
I'm going to have to build a Dennis Rodman shed in my backyard just to
Or at least a cardboard
boost that.
cutout.
There you go.
The reason is because that's one reason why in Hollywood they build their own studios, like houses. They'll rebuild and constitute houses, because they say when we show up and film in a neighborhood, they're like, for the first few days they're like, yeah,
Right. And then
But
they get
after-
very annoyed by it.
yeah, they get very quickly annoyed. They want it.
It's
out
11
there.
o'clock. Quit it.
So that, like, these
So
film
we got one more shot left.
Yeah, these film producers, like, there's this one movie. Did you ever see Matchstick Men with Nicolas
Yeah, of course,
Cage?
yeah.
The producer for that went around like Hollywood and like, okay, what's the house? Bam, that's the house that I want to recreate. And it was a sleek house with a pool in the front. And so he took pictures of it and then actually rebuilt the house inside the studio, like Warner Brothers Studios. And
If you
then-
got a good enough crew, that's an amazing way to do it. I mean, if you're shooting on a budget of $150, that's not going to happen. I mean, you can build like a scaled down model, but unless you put some green screen in there, it's not going to look realistic at all.
Yeah. So under the laws of the state of Missouri, let's talk about that with squatters and the laws of state of Missouri. Adverse possession is under the laws of state of Missouri. It's 10 years, and adverse possession is known as a defense to a possession action. So adverse possession is a defense. You can't assert a defense of adverse possession, like you can't say, I've been sitting here, so you file a claim on the house because I've been sitting here. That's not how it works.
All right.
The way that it happens is the title owner comes and says, hey, that's my place. And you say, well, I've been here 10 years, and I satisfy all the elements of adverse possession, which is NOAC, which is notorious, open, adverse, hostile, blah, blah, blah. And so those are the elements of the adverse possession. Actually, and then you use that as a defense to what the owner, so as an injectment action, because the owner will file an action to say, you're gone. I'm evicting you. Get out of this place. And then once he gets the eviction, then he can get the police to put your stuff on the curb if he gets that. But then you can assert the adverse possession as a defense. And if the defense holds,
then it's your property.
Yeah. Then they can't. Then what happens is you start paying the property taxes on it, or they will adverse possession on you. The government will say, "We've had this place before you were born. We have the police and we got more police than you got." So we have to pay the property taxes to hold the property. But property taxes are like rent to the government, right?
Yeah.
For your house, right?
It's so they can always keep you paying rent even if you own it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but that's one of the things that, like the government is all the community and the governmental programs are funded with property taxes and sales taxes. And those come from property therapists.
Right.
It does. The property owners. And when I was in high school, it didn't occur to me when I was on the bus that all these properties we were going by were paying for my privilege of being there. Right then. And then so the property therapy skills, this is why the enterprise, which is meeting the needs of humanity, and one of the needs of humanity is keep the rain off their heads.
Right.
So that feeds the property taxes. So if you get that, but it didn't occur to me that these were paying for my privilege of being there right now. So this is why we have.
Well, you're shooting the spitballs at those houses. You didn't realize they paid for you to be on that bus.
Yeah, no, and so we don't touch. So Jim, despite what Jim the Crow might think, the property therapist shouldn't be taken for granted. These money doesn't grow on trees.
Not unless I get that money tree off the ground.
So so we have the enterprise action. So there's a good enterprise, and then there's long-term bad enterprise like drug trades. That can affect.
And that also will drop property values. If you've got, say, a meth house in your neighborhood, people aren't going to want to bring their kids into that neighborhood, so they're not going to buy property there. And that affects you, and also can affect your property because of the element it's bringing in.
So the drug aspect is something that short-term can give a release, but long-term
causes more problems.
Causes long-term problems, and so that's why under the Hans theory of the law is what we talk about is that if the law doesn't really get involved in what you think or talk about, but once you start affecting others with your hands, with your conduct, then the law can get involved. And so, once it starts, the conduct starts affecting the community, then it starts affecting property values, and
just morale in general.
And so, to understand and how enterprise undergirds our whole community, and the enterprise is meeting the needs of humanity, and so if it starts affecting the enterprise, then that's something when the community wants to have a say in what's going on, right? So in addition to haunting and the subjective objective valuation, and like when your friend saw or says he saw your grandma on the porch, the face of grandma, we can't dispute that he sensed that, can we? But
you don't know what was in his head or what he saw.
Right. And for him, it has the effect. It affected him, right?
Right.
And so objectively, I mean, we sense and we can confirm things if it resonates that there's something,
Right.
there, or et cetera. And this is in so many ways that things can resonate with us somehow. And but other people might not see certain things,
Right.
but it has a subjective effect.
But even
to that
them
person,
saying that they've seen something can also affect your value
right?
on the property, because other people go, "Oh, that house is haunted," then it starts resonating.
Yeah, so you have, for your subjective valuation, that property has more than just your history. It has history in our time. Recently,
Right,
something
exactly.
really special happened on that house porch, didn't it?
It did. I sat there all the time. Yes, I
Something
just
even more
got married.
special.
I just got married on my porch.
Whoa!
Friday.
That is so awesome. So what happened?
It was about 11 p.m. and we realized, because she had wanted, well, we both wanted to get married on 10/10/2020. It's a numerical thing. And I realized it was 11 p.m. and Alexei was there and he's like, "I can marry you right now." I go, "Well, we got 49 minutes." And we threw a wedding together and it was all done before midnight.
And that's really special. And your grandma's house, she got to be married on the grandma's
So
house.
at least, even though they're not around anymore, they probably saw it.
And the next door neighbor
Yeah. And the neighbors
officiated the wedding, right?
My neighbor Alexei officiated the wedding. I think there was at least one other neighbor on the porch.
So Alexei is a very spiritual person, and that's
You can't see him, but he's over there.
Yeah. So you got your FTS wedding rings
Yeah,
now, right?
that's right.
So that's really special. So that even more affects the subjective valuation of that property.
And the fact that we were able to come together with all of it in such a short amount of time, in this day and age with all the things that are going on, you don't really get to throw a lot of good things together in the spur of the moment. And we I think in a lot of ways changed the neighborhood a bit. I think we brought more light to it in doing so.
Mm-hmm. So it was a outer acknowledgement of an inner commitment.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about this, that the property therapy network, one of the boosting of the morals of the property therapists is if they can enhance their property therapy network around them. And so you just enhanced your property therapy network when you linked up and did an outer acknowledgement of your inner commitment.
It's expanding all the way through the neighborhood at this point.
Yeah, that's a special thing.
What was it? A week before Alexei and I and my wife Lauren and Tilly and I, we walked up and down the neighborhood and we smudged the entire neighborhood. If you don't know what smudging is, that's not as dirty as it sounds. We essentially blessed it with a smudge stick, and oddly enough, things did calm down.
So we have the techniques of the smudge stick,
Yeah,
and other techniques as well. So let's talk about some techniques of humor.
techniques of humor.
So when you're constructing jokes, how does that happen?
A lot of times, the way I construct jokes is in conversation. Something will hit me just right, and I'll just keep going on something and then go, "Oh, I need to keep that. That's something I need to keep for later. That was actually pretty good." Don't get me wrong. Sometimes jokes are just personalized for the people I'm talking to at the time, and they're my little gifts. Like, there you go. That one's for you. That was written just for you. I can't really do that in a different context. That was all for this moment. And then other times you're like, "Oh, that's going to hit an audience." And then you start writing it out, and then you keep doing notes on it after that.
Architect.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of architecture involved in it, just building it together.
So you have shows when you're like in madman mode.
Yeah.
You're like cast your net wide.
There have been plenty of times where I got up on stage with a planned set and ended up just improvising the whole thing through.
That's utter madman mode.
Yeah.
So for those that have just tuned in, this is the Property Therapy Show. And what we were talking about, madman, architect, contractor, judge, those are the stages that they taught us in law school about when you're doing a communications or any kind of presentation. humor or chord, etc. There's 4 stages of it. There's the madman stage where it's just cast your net wide,
Right.
freestyle, and then the architect mode is when you're like, oh, that's a gem, or where you start making an agenda like prior towards, oh, that's got to be in there.
Yeah.
Where you make your agenda and you put that on your set list, right? And then you go, and then the contractor stage is where you start to flesh it out based on the agenda that you extemporize
Right.
based on the notes that you
Because
made.
you can start with a joke and know it's funny, but you're going to go over that and edit it and sometimes even piece it in with other things. You're like, oh, this could transition perfectly into this. And then that makes it snowball into, oh, I can transition that into that. And then you have a set already that you just got to refine. But I don't know if all comics are like this, because I can't speak for their brains. But like when I'm telling a joke or writing one or even a conversation, I'm building an entire world in my head at the same time. Like there's a lot more to it than what you just hear. Is like I've seen the entire sitcom of what that is in my head before, or even sometimes during while I'm saying it.
So you have not only the structure and the ideas, but also you have techniques of construction like misdirect.
Yes, one of my favorite things in the world is a misdirect. And it's often used to say something dirty, but what I like to do is set it up to where it sounds like I'm going to say something dirty and then say something really nice. Because nobody sees it coming and it still gets the laugh.
And that's the fresh, like comedy's built on like a fresh way of looking at things.
Yeah.
It's like rewiring, like taking this wire.
I wonder what happens if I put it over here. Yeah.
And so, we were talking about this before the show, is that you were the kid in the back of the room that was...
In school, I'm piecing together by what's going on in the room, building a joke together, and then blurting it out and getting in trouble. But I still got the laugh.
And so you were precocious.
Yeah.
You had an understanding of reading.
I was always fairly well read, and but I also loved comedy, and like I always had kind of a sarcastic side anyway.
So you had a precocious understanding of the material, and then so you were restless after that. You're like,
exactly.
So what else is there?
Like, what can I do next?
So you were
And then you just
rotating
keep
like a
doing it.
Rubik's Cube in your mind. You're like...
Right. The first set I ever did, I was 17. And I went to Stanford and Sons in Westport and got on stage because I was brought there by a friend of mine's roommate, and he was not funny. And the girls that were sitting there with him, I was making laugh the whole time. They're like, you got to get on stage. So the next week I went up and I wrote that bit that day. And I did like 3 minutes, and I did one more, and I got a Best of KC show. And this guy had been doing it for years and still hadn't made a professional show, and he was mad.
So that's the element of the freshness. So not only misdirect, we were also talking about vacillation.
Yeah.
Where you start changing the definition.
Right.
Definition of things.
Yeah, if you, the beauty of the English language is you can play with it. There's so many different things you can do, and words mean different things in different context and tone. And if you know how to switch up things and toss something out, like it puts a fresh perspective on it, and people don't see it coming.
A classic example of vacillation on this show would be in racism and racism, right?
There you go. I like that.
So the racism is the narrow definition of race is narrowly historically applied to genetic appearance or genetic construction, but the race can also be the race that you run,
Right.
Competition.
competition,
Yeah.
or how a system
That's
runs.
because it was a competition.
Yeah, and especially how so many forces have used it for political gain, and that it as a cudgel, and so it's losing. It's more for advancement of your political agenda,
Right.
rather than just the physical.
So in that
appearance.
point,
like these
it's
Black
even-
Lives, like you showed me that.
To political race.
Yeah, no, like these Black Lives Matter protesters, the ones that were arrested on you sent me that picture on American Gulag. There's all of the protesters for Black Lives Matter. What was their physical appearance? Like all of them were
All
arrested.
white.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was using race without helping people.
Right.
How it's in use. So we in my, like for instance, in my car, went to St. Louis to get a transmission for the van that we're working on in the
shop.
And we're putting in a new transmission, and then going to trade that for a bus for a property therapy tours.
Oh, that's
on our
cool.
bus tours. And but I've had to flush out the racism from the
Radiator.
in the radiator, like
In the cooling system.
yeah, in the cooling system. It was overheating because
Getting clogged up.
It was getting clogged up, and I had to.
I kept saying things like, get off my lawn,
Yeah, so it was overheating.
whined a lot.
Yeah, and like you would take off the cap. Yeah, no, yeah, and it look like mud
Oh,
in the
that's-
cap.
that's
it's
definitely not
serious. Have you guys never seen it?
No, I have. That's gross.
Yeah, no, it looked like some put stop leak in there or something.
Oh, probably.
And they had to keep on flushing it out. And then they flushed it out 4 or 5 times. 2 weeks ago, they flushed it 3 times. 2 weeks ago, it was overheating again, and they flushed out 3 more times 2 days ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I really put it to the
Somebody
test.
melted a cheeseburger in there,
That's not a good way to stop overheating.
but it's delicious.
It is. Smells amazing.
So in addition to techniques, you have, so you are accessing the language in clever ways.
Yeah.
And
A lot of joke building is taking all the knowledge base that you have that you've built over the years and figuring out new ways to put it together in funnier puzzles.
it's like when Bowie, when you get those jewels, you spend quite a few minutes just like maneuvering them around. So they get on the Bower videos, they get these trinkets around the Bowers that they build, and they're like, the straw should go in this way, and they're like, I'll put it that way, and that way, and that way. And so, in addition to that, though, you can also have you are cleverly breaking into the language.
Exactly.
And in the property therapy, you have clever some break-ins in property therapy and property.
Right, because sometimes you're like, oh, I know a better way to fix this. You see something and you go, I don't have to pay a contractor for that. I can make that. And then you go in and do it and you're like, oh yeah, that was a way smarter idea. That saved me $2,000.
We went to John's house, and he showed Bowie some property therapy tips.
Yeah, we'll have to post that video here this week. It'll be on our YouTube channel, Property Therapy Show.
Yeah,
Search YouTube for our channel.
be sure and subscribe to the channel. Be sure and hit that subscribe button to Property Therapy Show. And one of the things that John's been working on in his house is recoating the walls, finishing the walls,
Texture.
and
Put that texture on there.
yeah, shooting the texture.
Are you going to go old style stucco or?
It was some lath and plaster that in part of the house has been redone where it was just smooth drywall, so it didn't match. And then there was a place where I took out a non-load bearing wall.
And so we were talking about on the video that the texture has a way of not only. Well, here's the video right here.
Yeah, you guys can look at it, but
So these touring.
if you're listening on the radio or listening on YouTube, you can find this on our channel.
Yeah, Bowie's checking it out, and so the texture has not only a visual, it has an auditory effect. So visually, textured walls helps hide a multitude of sins, unevenness, especially on old structure,
Cracks and
cracks,
old paint.
yeah, or like bulges or deformities. But when you texturize it, it's like vibrato on a violin.
Right.
It can hide a multitude of sins. And so the texture, but also acoustically, it has effects acoustically.
It deadens the sound a little bit because there's nothing as reflective as a smooth surface. That's why you see
Right.
studios have that foam that's all shaped with the peaks
The
and
egg
valleys.
crate. Yeah.
So it can give some private.
Even some carpet on your walls will deaden it a lot.
Oh yeah.
As-
Privacy.
I've got stucco style textured walls. So the living room's actually pretty quiet if you're on the outside.
It's one of the purposes of the old popcorn ceiling. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
Deaden the room. And I've had rooms where I've put that in and had the same room nearby, and I'd go there and clap my hands, and the popcorn ceiling does deaden the sound quite a bit. So it's effective. It's just ugly because it looks like cottage cheese.
Right. And it gets all over the floor if you're tall and bump into it all the time.
So these are so we're this is for those that have just tuned in. This is the Property Therapy Show on 102.9 FM and 1140 AM, and we are going to go national with the property therapy show. And remember, when property has problems or issues, it needs therapy. And then in taking care of property, it takes care of you. So it's more than just you're like a therapy dog taking care of you. No, it's when the therapy dog itself has problems. You know, nails clipped. How do you clip the nails? Take care of the fur. You know, sometimes groom the fur. What food the dog likes. You know, taking it for a walk. And then in taking care of it, it takes care of you.
Right.
Right. So there's a self-interest motive in that, and also a selflessness aspect to it, but also a self-interest, and it's the beautiful thing, right? You experienced that too at the
Goes full
camps,
circle, yeah.
right?
Yeah. I've worked for Camp for the Mentally and Physically Handicapped or Developmentally Disabled for 20 years now. I actually started working with developmentally disabled kids in 5th grade, as my mom worked at my elementary school, and she was friends with the LD teacher, and she always thought I'd be good at it because I'm the guy that'd sit down at the lunchroom with the kid that was just by themselves, because I don't like seeing other people suffer. And I started doing the camp, but it's not entirely selfless. Like you think it is because you're taking care of people, but the fact is it resets you.
No doubt.
Like I have learned so much compassion and also patience and love because of that camp that I never would have gotten anywhere else in the world. And it kept bringing me back for 20 years.
That's property therapy right there, because you're taking responsibility for others.
Right.
And then it flows.
But it comes right back into you. If you go into it trying to get something out of it, you're not going to. If you go into it trying to give them something, you will. And that's the beauty of it. If you just do all you can to give them the best time possible during that and just brighten their spirits, it's going to come back to you tenfold.
Yeah, and that's what I experienced in law school. I was having a lot of emotional problems with what happened in our family was excommunicated from our church that I belonged to for 30 years.
Wow.
It's pretty traumatic. And then house burned down, one of my properties burned down, and fractured my rib.
That's a lot at once.
Yeah, and then law school, mind melting. Law school in ideologically and oftentimes not hostile. It's because it's an echo chamber, because they all seem to think alike in academia instead of having diversity of thought. So they just feel like you're isolated because you want to have, because there's a lot what goes on in a university is them putting forth opinions as objective.
Right.
When it's one way of looking at things.
There are definitely other ways to look at it.
There's other ways of looking at things, and there's a diversity of thought. And so I had a lot of emotional problems when I was in law school.
A lot of people do in law school.
Yeah. And so I was dealing with not only physical problems, but emotional problems. And so I started bringing my brother to the law school with me to help him, because he was excited about it. Yeah, I want to go to law school. So he had mental disabilities and catatonic schizophrenia, where he would freeze up or vegetate and just on the couch and not channel himself, and just want to help him awaken himself from the bat cave,
right?
Open himself up, and doing this, so we would go to class and sit in the back of the class, and then he would take notes when the professor. It was adorable, and that he was doing this, and then but in doing this process, and then after that, then I would take him to the soup kitchen, and we would work.
Yeah,
at the soup kitchen, give him a chance to help out in the community, and he just like lit up like a light bulb.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
They love when they can feel useful, and they should be able to feel useful.
Right. And so what happened was but in the process of doing that, it was helping me.
Right.
And so it was property therapy. That's where the concept was born.
That's cool.
And so so this show was started under quarantine. And I wanted to make a show that would be inspirational.
That's good.
Because
everybody needs it right now.
You're right. So motivation. So there's many ways to motivate people, and that's why we have a professional stand-up comic.
That's right.
Steve Thrilliams with us.
A guy you may or may not have heard of or heard before.
So he's made history, property therapy history, with this house that he inherited from his grandma, and was married on that very porch of that house.
I've made history for myself because this is the longest I've gone in an interview without cursing.
Yeah, incredible. And so we have a very inspirational, a man who can help build the morale of property therapists. That's one way we talked about that.
That's what comedy is for. Is building morale.
Yeah.
Like honestly, the reason I do it is to bring light to people.
Yeah.
Because the world's awful enough as it is, and if I could shine just a little bit in that darkness and make their day better, that's why I do it.
Right. And so there's many ways. That's one of the issues of property therapists is the morale of the property therapist. That's one of the issues of property therapy. Because if you can't take care of your body, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, how are you going to take care of other kinds of property?
Exactly.
If you can't take care of the body property. So that's part of the morals of the property therapist. And in addition to humor, is also faith orientation. That's a big part of that.
Yeah, it is.
FTS.
That's right.
He's got his FTS ring, and so we did a Power Ranger.
With our powers combined.
Exactly. So we have the faith orientation helps build morale because it's hard.
Yeah.
To take care of property
Having
sometimes.
something to fall back on that's always there makes it a lot easier.
Right. I mean, because it's a challenge taking care of property, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's any number of things that are going to, whether physically or metaphorically, stub your toe at any day, and that you're going to have to deal with. But if you just get down in a hole, you're not doing anything. But if you can figure out a way to pick yourself back up out of that hole, you're going to be able to do a lot more with your property.
Mm-hmm. So when we have that's what about having a property therapy network around you, people that are motivational, inspiring, that have done that. Right. Pedagogical contractors, that's what we call them. People around there that know that's got property therapy skills, and it increases your morale. And then the faith orientations helps you hang in there because you know that you're playing long ball.
Right. Yeah.
Because what you're doing echoes in eternity, and that's one of the powerful things about the faith, and it's also a great driver for productivity. And we were sharing on one of the shows when Castro took power in Cuba, he noticed that the productivity all of a sudden went spiraled down to crap, and Castro was like, "Well, what was going on? What's going on? I'm doing this for you people.
Right.
Why isn't this working?" And number one, he created talent flight, and saying where the government, well, we're going to take possession of the property and the means of production.
Anybody who could build a boat just floated off to Miami.
That's right. All the talented people. It creates talent flight when you don't have property therapy going on among the private citizens. That's why this shows helps to reach out and teach the
same things happen with Hollywood. Everything's getting filmed in Vancouver now.
Yeah,
because they didn't take care of Hollywood.
Yeah, no doubt. And so what happened was Castro put his academics together in Cuba, and they were researching, well, why is this going on? This talent, why is the production just going down the pits? And they came up with, they say, the creator is, you took the creator out of society, the faith from the people. Because the notion of a creator causes people to work harder without needing to have immediate benefit.
Right.
See? And so because you're playing a long ball, you're seeing what you're doing echoes in eternity, and it helps you keep faith, you see, which is necessary for property therapy. Because
if you don't have faith, you're never finishing anything.
Yeah. And it's because a lot of these property therapy projects, they're not just one-day deal. This is a long, like John's house.
My first one took 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have to keep a long, like an itinerary, and keep the faith. And like when the house that burned down when I was in law school, it was a triplex. It took me 11 months to rebuild it, and I had to build replace the floor joist, or the floor, one of the beams on the underground.
Really?
It was an 8 by 8 beam, and I had to lift the house up with a 50-ton jack cut out a 5 or 6 foot section, pop it out, put a new fresh section of support it with beams underneath, and then replace 10, 12-foot floor joists. It was burned out in the basement, and then rebuilt the electrical system. That was fried, run 500 or 600 feet of line in there, and then with had to redo all the plumbing because the heat, it was like playing whack-a-mole.
Right.
The heat actually loosened all the solder joints on all the joints.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I would fix one spot and then pressurize the lines, and I would wait for like 3 minutes, and then I would see the water dripping from the wall, like 6 feet away. So I would cut open the wall, fix that, and then to pressurize. There would be another leak that would be seeping through the wall, and I couldn't hear it go, psss, but it was a seep.
It was enough,
and it was like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
So and a lot of I had to go through and do PEX, repex a lot of the systems, and I just bypassed the copper systems, and then. And so that was part of the I was in two worlds, the hands-on world and the lawn world. But this is ultimately what the property therapy skills saved me financially.
Well, yeah.
To be able to do that, I would be in an economic hole if I couldn't do that myself. And it was like materials. It was
You're
like,
looking at thousands there for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, no, for materials, it was like $8 or $9 grand for the whole triplex rebuilding. That's it.
That's not bad.
No. And I mean, if I bid it with a contractor doing it, would be 60 grand. Easy. 60 grand.
At least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Material costs, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is for real. And we want everybody to get property therapy skills, especially the artists.
Right.
You know, we want them to get traction because so many of them just like disappear in the woodwork. Like the realities of life just shut down and their genius disappears.
Right.
And they don't channel themselves. Like especially when they catch that lightning in a bottle, they need to sink those funds, etc. Or they need to sink it and help it like in a property, like sink it into property so they can get traction in that talent harbor on that. So not only is there real estate property, there's all sorts of different kinds of property, like personal property, like trucks.
Yeah. Like I have a 95 Ford F-150, but I would honestly rather have that than any new thing on the road because I know it's going to keep going. It's like 350,000 miles and still runs like new. I've loaded wood for Alexei twice with it, with at least a ton in the back of it, and I put a ton of sand in it a couple weeks beforehand. Just drove completely normal and it'll stay that way for another 20 years or so. And as long as I keep up the oil changes and that kind of thing, that thing will stay on the road because they were built back then to last. It wasn't planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
But it's got that feel, and it feels right with the house. You know, it's an older style truck. I'm kind of an older style guy, with the exception of most of my humor. But I mean, I say old timey things continuously, so she laughs about it all the time. But you know, I'm the kind of guy to say poppycock in a sentence, or willy nilly. I say willy nilly all the time. Yeah, exactly.
So so we've talked about property therapy issues, valuation, drug trade, neighborhood weddings, loving your truck, and faith orientation. So, but when you get out there, we're here with professional comic Steve Thrilliams. But when you get out, let's talk about now supporting your sound.
Okay.
Because not only is there we've been talking about like how to create and form or presenting the ideas, creating the ideas like the intangible property, which is your ideas. But now there's a whole another issue about how you're presenting that.
Right, because you blow your throat out, you can't say anything, and nobody understands it, and it goes nowhere.
So on the show, we have what's supporting your sound, what that means. The supporting your sound, the way that the body works, the human body works, is with a process called reverse venation. And when you're supporting your sound, you can speak with a lot more resonance and longer, can't you?
Oh, yeah.
And you have to have that as in a comic.
Yeah, definitely, because sometimes you're going to go on a rant that's 3-4 minutes, and you're not really breathing that much during that. You know, like I was saying earlier, sometimes you take that second to take a breath in while there's a laugh, because people are distracted enough at that point. But if you take too long, you're going to ruin the flow of it, and it just doesn't have the same feeling anymore.
Throws off your rhythm.
Yeah, exactly.
So supporting your sound. So this is the property therapy and talent development show. So the talent. So underlying talents is an understanding of how you do support your sound.
In a lot of ways, and I've noticed before I go on stage, I'm almost meditating while I'm standing there. You're kind of slowing your heart rate down and getting your breathing normal before you go out there, so you can do some leaps and bounds with it after you get on stage. Because after you're out there, you're just out there.
Yeah. So the way the body works when you're breathing, it's called reverse venation, and that's opposite of how a frog breathes. When you see the bullfrogs, is they gulp air, and their throat comes out, and then what happens is they push the air inside. They grab the air and push it in with physical force. They go like this, and then push it in, and the air pushes in. Our body works just opposite. We work with negative pressure. What happens is we have our bulb that instead of that pops out of our throat, pops down from our chest cavity, which is the diaphragm. Yeah. What happens is that drops and it creates a negative pressure. And so the air goes, it goes right in. So it sucks in of its own accord. So if you're breathing and you're breathing like this, you're breathing wrong. If your shoulders are moving, like you're breathing wrong. And like you can see like immature singers, they're like,
right,
like that. Or will they go for high notes and like, whoa! Like that, their shoulders go up. That's all wrong.
Yeah,
you know that they're wrong, and you can tell if a singer's doing this, or like a rock singer, if they're moving their shoulder, gesticulating their shoulder, they're not trained. They're not supporting their sound at all. The way that babies breathe is the way that you support your sound. Like you've seen a baby lying on a crib, how its belly goes up and down, and that's the proper way of breathing, because your diaphragm drops and the belly comes out. That's all that happens. The upper chest cavity should stay neutral the whole time. And so this on the contract. So the Contractor Olympics, we're going to do a test. So on the property therapy show, we don't just talk. We have demonstrations.
All right. Well, they're going to be headed over to the performance area here in the American Heritage Center. Let me tell you about our sponsor for this episode. It's Big Dudes Music City, one of my favorite places to go. Because I've been a semi-pro musician most of my life. They've been there since 1976. They do lessons, repairs, rentals, installs, anything related to your music, your AV. 3817 Broadway Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri. They got guitars, keyboards, drums, recording, DJ equipment, lighting equipment, accessories, used gear. They got a lot of pros working down there that can help you out. Find out whatever you need. Get your property therapy skills on your musical instruments. They do guitar lessons, anything a professional musician might need, everything from beginners to professionals. Where the pros shop. Big Dudes Music City, 3817 Broadway Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri. Now we're going to get over to Adam. They're performing. They're warming up right now. They're going to perform some, looks like they're going to do a Billy Joel song.
who's selling a navy.